Hey everyone, welcome back. This time showing a replay of a game where I had lost as Vadrok. So there's been a number of changes. I'm going to slow it down a little bit. There's been a number of changes since last week, and they've been pretty significant. Not all the changes were made in this list that I'm playing here, but a lot of the changes were made as a result of this list and the things that I learned from this game. So here we're playing a game, power level 7 to 8, which is roughly about what this deck is designed to be built around. This guy's playing a Ragavan as their commander. We're playing against Knuckle Bolas, Full Health, and of course we're playing Vadrok. And in a real game, in an actual game, you don't see other players' hands. Obviously, you only in the replay you see like everyone's cards and everything. But what I had found is that most of our combos, because they rely on 7 mana, uh, there's some benchmarks. I should probably start with that. And that is that we want to be able to combo off reliably uh, anywhere from turn 5 to turn 8. So, turn 5 if we get really lucky, turn 8 at the worst case. So, we need to be able to generate um, a significant amount of mana uh, before, ideally before turn 7. Like we would really like to combo off turn 6 or turn 7, or at least be able to threaten comboing off. Because if we're a Spellslinger deck and a combo deck and it's reached turn 8 and we can't even threaten a combo, then our deck is actually slow and probably not even like power level 7 to 8. And so the big thing that you'll see here is that in this game, I will struggle to actually be able to threaten comboing off simply because I couldn't reach the amount of mana necessary. And so some of the changes that I'll talk about at the end of viewing this replay, end of sharing this replay with you, have to do with some of the additional mana rocks I've added, some of the creatures I've changed around that generate mana, and essentially just harping on the idea that we already have a lot of dig and a lot of ways to put things in our graveyard. We have ways to get rid of stacks pieces, at least temporarily, so that we can combo off. Yeah, most of that removal is instant speed, bounce some kind of non-land permanent. Uh, but oftentimes in the previous list, the issue we had was that unless we drew like Smothering Tithe or landed an early Kaikar, we just couldn't combo off. Or just because we didn't have the mana, we'd be like, oh, I'm 1 mana short. And so that's what you're going to see in this game. This is a pretty typical game here against Nicol Bolas, who is going to start attacking our hand relatively soon. In this game, I have a pretty slow start again. I believe I'm trying to remember why I kept this hand. I think it was originally because we had like a Mystical Tutor and a Imperial Recruiter. I don't entirely remember, but I know keeping a hand with Mystical Tutors is sometimes questionable this deck. Uh, Oftentimes grabbing Mystical Tutor or using Mystical Tutor to grab a wheel is one of our best plays, just because it allows us to stock the graveyard faster. Unfortunately, wheeling your opponents, especially if they're playing some sort of graveyard reanimation deck, is not always the best. It is possible that I shouldn't have kept this hand. I have been adding to the primer rules on uh, what you can keep, and so I've kind of been fleshing out the game plan. It's getting to that point where we've run about 45 to 50 games, somewhere around half the games that we want to be running. And again, I'll be testing this to around 100 games before I consider it complete. But the game plan is starting to get fleshed out, and it pretty much is going to come down to we have to have some sort of acceleration. Ledger Shredder is also keepable just because it's likely to stock your graveyard, and of course Mystic Remora gives you card draw, at least in theory, if people are playing non-creatures. But um, the the emphasis has now been on mana. I think there's enough dig in the deck to really just focus on, okay, we need to assemble the mana as quickly as possible, and then just naturally playing the deck, you're going to dig and dump stuff in the graveyard and whatnot. So here I'm going to brainstorm I'm actually hoping for some kind of land here. Brainstorm can be kind of risky when you don't already have a fetch land in hand because you can't mull away, or not mull away. You can't shuffle away the cards that you put back on top. But in this case, I was hoping to hit a fetch land. And unfortunately, I didn't. But being able to play the Mystic Remora is also pretty good. It kind of offsets the fact that Nicol Bolas had made his discard when it came into play. I'm going to go ahead and speed this up because a lot of this game um, will not be particularly relevant just because for us, what I really want to showcase is how we got close to where we could combo off, but just could not just because we didn't have the mana. And so a bunch of things are going to happen here that we don't care that much about. So again, one of the upsides of being a Spellslinger deck is that, uh, someone plays a board wipe. We don't care too much about it. We're creature light. Oftentimes our board doesn't even look that threatening, so we're able to slide under the radar in that sort of subtle strategy that I kind of mentioned in some of my other videos. And if you play Commander a lot, then you know that you want to be the subtle threat. Like you don't want to come out of the gates charging really quickly, um, because if the other players at the table are playing equally powered decks, they will use their removal on you, and then whoever basically went second is actually going to be able to combo off and take the win. And we naturally have that sort of thing going for us just because as a spell slinger deck we don't play that much. Of course, if someone is harping at the table saying like, hey, he's playing spell slinger combo deck, we should all just focus him, and just saying that constantly, then there's not much we can do about that other than try to counter back with our own politics and try to dissuade them from swinging into us. But here, he made his discard. We don't care that much about the discard. In fact, that kind of helps us. Literally, we just need to assemble enough mana to Vadrok onto something, probably cast Underworld Breach, and then go to town. We don't have a bounce spell here in hand, um, but it's not gonna be too difficult to find one. So yeah, if you were to Underworld Breach, you could Mystical Tutor and then Brainstorm to draw it. Here we see Smothering Tithe, one of the best cards that we want. Just to be able to generate mana. Of course, we have the Merchant Scroll here. That'll get us our Snap or Bounce spell. But again, the issue that you'll see later on, and I wish I could just fast forward this all the way to the end, but the issue you'll see is that even though this guy's attacking our hand, this guy recognizes the threat that we pose and is attacking us. We are not able to ultimately combo. Even though he's down to like 2 cards and we have card draw, we aren't able to combo before he takes us out because we did not have enough mana generation. And so some of the things in here that did get discarded, for example, in the Neheb Dreadhorde Champion, are being cut for things that can more reliably generate mana is the better way to put it. So here you place the Port Razor, half of a potential combo. This guy does pay for the Smothering Tithe, which I really like actually. People should pay for Tithe more often, but again, as someone who's only got 2 cards in hand, he probably doesn't have something to use all this mana with. And that's something that a lot of other decks struggle with, is once they have a bunch of mana generation, or they start off the game with a bunch of ramp, but if they don't have enough card draw in their deck, they put like their whole hand on the field, and they're like, oh, I'm out of cards, and I have no card draw, and so I have a bunch of ramp, and I can maybe cast my commander, but I don't really have anything. So here we died, and what we needed essentially was one more round. I'm not sure I can actually back it up, but we had the Smothering Tithe in place. We could Vadrok into a wheel. I'm not sure if you remember that I had a windfall in the graveyard. We could Vadrok into a wheel. Alternatively, could have Vadrocked into Underworld Breach and then just cast the wheel. And then Smothering Tithe would have generated us significant amount of mana, and then with that Breach, continue wheeling to generate mana with that Smothering Tithe. And of course, we'll always be able to pay for Breach as long as we're continually casting the wheel, and then the graveyard would have been stocked, and we would have won the game. So why were we unable to combo off before he killed us? Well, let's see what turn it is. It's like, what, turn 5? Turn 6? I want to say turn 5. Not sure who started the game, but I think it was this guy, turn 5. And so I think that if I had more mana acceleration in this game, there would have been a way to actually threaten the combo before he killed us. Okay, so let's see here. These are the changes that I've made. So far, it is a lot, and I want to kind of go over them. So the first is talking about the things that generate mana. So Realmwright was a cut simply because all it does is combo with High Tide. And even then, I felt like the games where I was winning after casting High Tide and then doing some sort of combo didn't exactly require Realmwright. And so I think I'd rather have a Talisman. Um, Also because there are a number of games where I play against stacks, whether it's Stasis or I'm trying to think like Back to Basics, uh, as well as Blood Moon. At higher level games, you see a lot of stacks pieces, and so things that shut off your lands. And so just having more artifact mana is generally good. So Realmwright got replaced by the Talisman. The Neheb Dreadhorde General, this guy is never attacked in the roughly 40 games that I've tested. He gets played and he dies. And in most cases, I felt like I wanted some other way to beat a rule of law or some sort of stacks effects that is hosing my graveyard that doesn't just require, that doesn't just bounce it to their hands, because it pretty much means that I have to combo off that turn or else they're just going to replay it. And so Skyclave Apparition has actually been really solid for me in testing, and I'm happy for the switch. These aren't exactly one-to-one. The left here is all the cards I've cut, and the right are the cards I've added. Neheb is also a source of mana generation if he was able to attack, but I end up replacing it with Goldspan, or I added Goldspan Dragon. It's kind of like a similar effect, except a little bit more expensive, but Goldspan actually kind of ramps you twice because the treasures will tap for 2, and he also gets to attack when he comes into play and automatically generate a treasure. And if opponent tries to kill Goldspan Dragon using some sort of like spell, then you generate another treasure token, and you're still net even in the amount of treasures that you, or at least the mana that the treasures tap for. Path Exile was replaced with Geistwave. Again, I think bounce is a little bit more important here than another creature hoser, especially because we added Skyclave, which does hit pretty much any non-land permanent. Also felt like the real problems that we have are not enemy creatures, but rather things that can hose our non-creatures. So anything like Rest in Peace, Ground Seal, played a number of games where those have stopped me from comboing off. And that kind of goes with the cut here of Drannith Magistrate for Malevolent Hermit. Magistrate is something I generally throw into white decks by default, but after playing this about 40-45 times, I'm starting to realize that Drannith is not really where I want to be. And the Hermit, also human, so doesn't really. Drannith is also human too, so no downside there other than the fact that you can disturb the Hermit and flip it over to the Spirit side, which is actually a very relevant effect for this deck. Yeah, so this ability is actually super relevant, at least for us. Played a number of games where Ranger Captain of Eos was sitting on an opponent's field, and being able to disturb the Hermit into the Benevolent Geist has been relevant for me. And so yeah, basically making sure our non-creatures, our Vadrok combos can't be countered is more important than stopping their commander. Lightning Bolt for Chef's Kiss. This one is a bit obscure because Lightning Bolt is sort of a pseudo removal, but it's also a pseudo removal that kind of primarily hits either creatures or planeswalkers, which again, most of which we don't care about, and we'd rather have something that gets rid of like a Rule of Law or Rest in Peace, or Ground Seal. Lightning Bolt I found was not really a card we want to run, because it is a sort of removal and combo finisher if we can create infinite Vadroks. But if you think about it, if you're going to go infinite with Vadrok, you don't really, it doesn't matter what you combo with, right? Could be Lightning Bolt, could be anything. And so I think it's better to just have Chef's Kiss, because this card is technically bad with like anyone else. However, it is good with Vadrok because of weird corner cases. So the way this combo works, here, I'll just do this Google search here, and in this Ask a Judge thing that you see here, someone asks, okay, you have Vadrok, Chef's Kiss, and then he goes infinite and actually combos with Lightning Bolt, but you can essentially allows you to cast every non-creature spell that costs 3 or less from your graveyard. And the reason why it works is because of, so Chef's Kiss originally most people would think wouldn't work, and I thought it wouldn't work when I first read it because it says copy it, reselect the targets at random, and the new targets can't be you or permanent you control. So I would think that you can't just mutate back onto a non-human creature you control. And for those who aren't understanding the loop, it's you cast Vadrok, you hold priority, you cast Chef's Kiss, targeting Vadrok, and that's going to create a copy of Vadrok. And then when the copy mutates, the Chef's Kiss will be in the graveyard. The copy of Vadrok, once it's mutated, it creates that mutate trigger. You cast Chef's Kiss again, targeting the original Vadrok that's still in the stack, and you just basically make infinite Vadroks that go underneath whatever you're mutating. Keyword underneath, because if you mutate on top, it's legendary, and so you have to continually sack the creature. But when you mutate underneath, it keeps the name of the creature on top, not Vadrok that's underneath, and so you can just keep stacking Vadroks underneath. So the reason why this actually works, even though it seems like it doesn't, based on reading the card, and this is one of the more like obscure things in Magic, is that Chef's Kiss has a text that says, where is it? Yeah, this one right here. If there are no legal targets that could be selected, the targets remain unchanged. And this is the key line. So mutate has to target, or has to be onto a non-human creature you control and own. So if you Chef's Kiss your Vadrok, normally you would think, okay, with any other spell, it would have to be redirected to something I don't control. But because mutate says it can only target something, a non-human that you control, what Chef's Kiss does here is it will keep the original targets, and then basically allow you to do this loop. So normally, while Chef's Kiss would be a terrible card to run, it has this corner case of being extremely good with Vadrok. And it is one of the combos that is mentioned in the primer. Is actually the top combo here. You do need the graveyard to be relatively stocked, and you need 7 mana to pull this off. 4 for the Vadrok Mutate and another 3 for Chef's Kiss. And there are what I've listed 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 8 cards currently that actually work. This might be incomplete. I might have to reevaluate this, but so far I've identified 8 cards that you could actually do this combo with. If you don't have any of these, you can go infinite casting non-creature spells in your graveyard, but they're not going to actually keep filling your graveyard and giving you value. So you eventually peter out and your combo does nothing. So going back to what we're talking about, Grinning Ignus has been cut for Birgi. Now I can't run both because Birgi and Grinning Ignus is a 2-card infinite combo by itself, and it's kind of my policy not to run 2-card infinites by themselves. Part of the reason why I wanted to cut Grinning Ignus is because when you cast Grinning Ignus, opponents read it, and even if they don't know what your Vadrok combos are, they see that card and they say, okay, that's a combo piece, and then you get targeted and you get focused. And I think people say the same thing for Birgi as well, but Birgi is more generically useful because Birgi ramps you red mana. And so whereas Grinning Ignus literally sits there and does nothing unless you can combo off, Birgi has more applicable uses. And because I've kind of replaced the Grinning Ignus combo with the Chef's Kiss combo, the red mana that Birgi gives you is a lot more relevant here. Just in that you can do the math and see if you can combo off of Birgi triggers, whereas Grinning Ignus would require you to have the mana needed to hardcast everything. And honestly, Grinning Ignus is just not that good of a card. Okay, so then Seal of Removal for Alchemist Retrieval. I'm still playing around with non-land bounce. Seal of Removal, the downside is that it can only bounce a creature. And the issue that I found, of course, these games is that creatures are not our problem. things that like stop us from playing multiple spells in a single turn. So like Rule of Law, Deafening Silence, things that hose our graveyard, like Rest in Peace, and Ground Seal. Those are the actual problem, and so we need more things that bounce non-creature permanents, um, or just non-land permanents in general. And so Alchemist Retrieval also costs 1. If we want to target something that we control, or we can pay an extra mana if we want to bounce something else. And so I think it's pretty flexible and much better target um, for Vadrok than having like a ground seal in the deck. And then some of these are land changes. I should have grouped them together, but I'll cover them all together right now. So that's going to be, actually just going to move these up here. Right, so the Shivan Reef for Tarnished Citadel. Shivan Reef already is not an island, so does not technically count for High Tide. But we are more of a 3-color deck than possibly in the past, simply because we now have double color pips like Ranger Captain of Eos and Skyclave Apparition. And there have been a number of games where I wish I had double white. And so having a Tarnished Citadel is a good include there. And again, the 3 damage does not matter. We would gladly pay 3 life, or just take 3 damage in order to get whatever color we're missing. So that's the first change there. And then snow-covered plains for Volcanic Island. I know that is reducing the number of. No, I think I wrote that wrong. I didn't cut any plains. I cut islands. That's what I did. We used to have like 4 snow-covered islands in the deck. Now we're down to 2, because again we need more colored pips that tap for multiple colors, and so I've added in Volcanic Island. This one's kind of a hard include for me. I don't like including cards that cost like over $500 in my deck, and so this one's a tough include, but I think it's necessary because it does work with High Tide, and it does tap for multiple pips. So, or rather, it taps for multiple colors, not multiple pips. And then another island for Sea of Clouds, just because it taps for more than 1 color. So we are losing some islands for High Tide. I think actually we only lose 1 island that could have worked for High Tide. And so for the most part, I think these changes have worked out well, at least in my current testing. Having more colored mana, or at least the ability to tap for different colors, has been very relevant. Ponder I cut for Teferi Master Time, and I'm still debating this change. Teferi has been relevant in that sort of looting ability. It also has been used for phasing out a relevant enemy creature that is trying to attack us. I'm still debating whether it's actually better in Ponder here, because having a looter is exceptional in this deck, but it makes me wonder whether we should actually just run like a looter creature rather than Teferi, even though Teferi activates every single turn. Teferi usually doesn't last very long, and so you maybe get a couple loots out of him before he dies. But in terms of like tempo, the fact that you can activate Teferi the moment he comes down generally makes him better in looters, where you have to wait like a full turn cycle, and then they even tap and loot once, unless I run like Dragon Speaker Shaman or something like that. But so far, in the one game I've seen Teferi, I've liked him. So for now, he's a keep, but he is still a questionable include. Another one here, Yusri for Goldspan Dragon. That kind of goes back to, it's not directly Yusri for Goldspan Dragon. I know I wanted to cut cards in general for more like ramp, potential ramp. And so Yusri was a card draw source, but honestly, I didn't feel like we were lacking card draw. We care more about what's in the graveyard than necessarily what's in our hand most of the time. And so I felt like Yusri doesn't do as much as Goldspan Dragon here. Goldspan Dragon's also a non-human, so we don't lose a non-human slot. It comes into play, attacks, makes a treasure token. Your opponent tries to remove it with a removal spell. It also makes another treasure token. And then let's see here. An offer you can't refuse to force some negation. So this one's pretty relevant just because we are running compact combos, and so by the time that we are comboing off, if we need a counterspell, we want that counterspell to cost nothing, or at least to be able to exile a card from our hand, rather than have a blue mana up. There have been a number of games where I'm exactly at 7 mana, which is like what we need to combo off, and then I have no mana for any counterspells, and so we need our counterspells to basically be free. And then the last one here, I already talked about. Hosing their commander has not been as relevant as, uh, both sides of this are extremely relevant for us. This can stop a stacks piece that would hose us and then flip over to give us some assurance when we're about to combo off, assuming we have like 10 mana or some. Even if you have to telegraph it, like you disturb this and then pass turn, if they haven't killed you or gotten rid of it on your next turn, then you can probably combo off and win. And there are times where that has happened. So definitely a better include than the Drannith Magistrate. So that's where the list is at. The primer is starting to get built. The game plan is starting to get fleshed out. And there's, I want to say, about 50 more games to go before I'd say this deck is complete.